Alrighty. Thank you everybody for joining today on this BevAge Encore session. We are going to give here a few seconds to a minute just to make sure everybody has time to trickle in and get settled. For those of you who are joined, this is that BevAge Encore session for Accounting Forensic. Our presenter today is going to be Dawn. And this session is going to be distributor focused. So if you are here for the producer side, if you're a brewer, then that session will happen right after this. So please go ahead and join that one. You can still register on the e-learning dashboard. But as I mentioned, this is distributor focus, excuse me. Like I said, we'll go ahead and start here within a few seconds, a little under a minute, just to make sure people have time to trickle in. Alrighty, so it does look like we've had a few more people join. So we'll go ahead and get started. As mentioned before, this is the BevAge Encore session for Accounting Forensic for Distributor Focused. Again, if you are here for the producer focused one, that will be happening right after, and you can still register on the e-learning dashboard. Our presenter today is Dawn, and she will go ahead and take it away. Alrighty.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex. So, yep, like Alex said, we're talking accounting forensics today. And what we're really looking to do is to understand those journal entries that are created in Encompass. My name is Dawn Van Boord, and I'm the manager of accounting services here at Encompass. If you are on Encompass Financials, we've probably worked together. If you are not on Encompass Financials and we've not worked directly together, it's likely that I've maybe worked behind the scenes or helped out behind the scenes if you've had questions with mapping or other journal entry related questions. Looking at our agenda today, we are going to start with account mapping. Every transaction in Encompass, whether it's a purchase, an invoice, an AR receipt, or a deposit, all of those transactions will create a journal entry in Encompass. And those journal entries are 100% of the time determined by the account mapping. So to understand those journal entries is to really look and know and understand your account mapping. So we're going to take a look at all 5 of these account mapping tables. Then we're going to look to understand journal entries. We'll look at the journal entry transactions. We'll take a peek at that journal entry details report and try to answer that question. How did this account get hit? Why does this account have this balance that I can't explain? So getting started, we're going to start with our inventory asset account maps. Our inventory asset account maps are a little bit unique in that both invoices and purchases, both of those transactions will look at this mapping table. All of the other maps we're going to look at, it is really just one transaction source that will look at this table. But in this case, when we have those purchases bringing product into our warehouse, or we have those sales invoices taking product out of the warehouse, both of those transactions are going to be looking at this map, and that's a good thing. We want to make sure our inventory general ledger account, we are increasing and decreasing that same general ledger account as that product moves in and out of the warehouse. So if you have a question about inventory, whether it's on a purchase or an invoice, this is the mapping table to come look at. Every mapping table will go through a set of determining factors to determine which map is going to be hit for this particular scenario. So the determining factors on our inventory asset account map, the first thing we're going to look at is company. So if you have multiple companies on your Encompass site, we're going to have a unique set of maps for each company. So we'll look at that transaction, that purchase, and see what company does this belong to, and immediately those are the maps we're going to filter to. Those are the ones that are going to come into play. Then we'll look at location. If location is something that you use to determine which general ledger account should be hit, then we should map it, and then we will use that also in determining which map we're going to hit. And then lastly, we'll look at product type, supplier, and product. And this is where you are mapping. We encourage you to map at the product type level, and then anything that needs to behave maybe a little differently than the other products in that product type, you can map those at the product level. But By and large, we'll tell you to map at the product type level. And again, anything that needs to behave differently, map at the product level, or if supplier comes into play. If supplier is something that matters and when we're picking that general ledger account, we can also include that. Let's go look at an example. I've got an example purchase here, and let's see if we can figure out what that journal entry is going to look at. So the first thing I want to know is, what company does this purchase belong to? The company is going to live on the vendor. If it's not immediately obvious to me which company this vendor belongs to, I could go ahead and click on it. And right here, it's telling me that it's company FEB. So awesome. I'm going to make note of that. I'm also going to notice my location is BevAge-CH. So great. I'm going to come over to my inventory asset account maps, and let's just take a look to see how many maps we have to begin with. So we're starting with 88 maps. That can be an overwhelming amount to look at. If I'm thinking, I just want to know what my journal entry is going to be, 88 maps is way too many for me to be looking through individually, but let's go ahead and start to sort. So we know our company is FEB, and then we know our location was that BevAge-CH. So immediately narrowing our scope, limiting the number of maps we have to look through. Let's look at the products that are on this purchase. So if I don't know what product type, if it's not immediately obvious to me what product type these products belong to, I could go ahead and click on one. So I'm clicking on that product, and over here, it tells me that it's a product type of beer. Great. I'm going to go to my inventory asset account map and filter to a product type of beer. Fantastic. Now I am down to one map. So way fewer maps to be looking through. I was just looking at my company, my location, the products listed on here. We could double check to make sure this one is the same. It is also beer. So this tells me this inventory asset account map here is telling me what the journal entry is going to be. It's saying it's going to be hitting account 1131,000. So if I come back to my purchase and scroll down a little bit, this is where we see the actual journal entry created from this transaction. So we have a debit to our 1131,000 account. It's exactly what we expected. I also see a credit to this excise tax payable account. That's coming from these other laden costs. I see that we are accruing $30 of tax here. That tax is hitting this 2255,000 account because of that same map. So if we go look at our inventory asset account maps here, the tax accrual account is mapped here, 2255,000. Fantastic. So the two accounts being chosen here were 100% determined by that one map. I will note that we are crediting the excise tax payable right here instead of including it with accounts payable. Because we are accruing it, we don't owe it to this vendor, we owe it to a different vendor. If we had used the on invoice method of same purchase, which is usually oftentimes used for freight, not tax, but that means I owe that freight or that tax to this same vendor. And in that case, I wouldn't see that accrual here. That $30 would be included in accounts payable. So just wanted to call out when it's down here and it's a default or it's same shipment, we'll accrue it. If it's same purchase, we won't see this liability account come into play. Cool. Let's go back to our presentation. My pro tip here: if you are, looking at a journal entry from a purchase and it is not hitting the account you would expect it to, check to see if there've been new product types created, maybe by the operations team, and maybe they forgot to tell the accounting team, hey, I created these new product types. If they didn't tell you that they created them, you're not going to know to go map them. So when things are not hitting that expected account, the first place I would go check to see is, are there new product types? Are there product types that are out there that have not been mapped? Let's go look at our inventory asset account mapping one more time. I'm going to take out that product type. If we look at this first map right here, notice there's no product type, supplier, or product mapped. So it would be what we call as our catch-all map or our red flag map. It is mapped to an error account. So that means if the product type or the products used on that purchase or invoice, if they are not mapped out here specifically, I've got a lot of products mapped, Here are where my product types are mapped. It is going to hit this map here, and that is your red flag that, hey, when you see dollars flowing into that account, whether you see it at the end of the month or you're checking mid-month, that is when you know I need to go look to see what product types or what products are hitting this account so that I can come and update this mapping. Update the mapping so that moving forward, those product types and products will hit the account that you specifically want them to, and not just this catch-all account. Moving on to our expense account maps. So our expense account maps are only for purchases, whereas before the inventory asset account maps for invoices and purchases, expense account map just for purchases. So if I had a question about a journal entry on an invoice, I would not come to this table because I know it's not coming into play. Now, specifically with these purchases, this is for non-inventory products that are put on a purchase. So in our previous example, those products were inventoryable products. They would be track inventory equals true. The expense account comes into play when our products or product types are track inventory equals false. Looking at our determining factors, we'll do that same thing. If you have multiple companies, first we'll look at company. If location is something that we have introduced and mapped, we will also look at location, and then you can map it based on product type or at the product level. On our inventory asset account maps, oftentimes we'll tell you to do it at the product type level. On the expense account maps, when you'll have maybe a bunch of non-inventory items in a product type called non-inventory, but all of those non-inventory items probably have very unique places they need to go. A fuel charge, a split case fee. So this one, it is more likely that we will see them mapped at the product level. But let's go look at an example. So I've got an example purchase here. Same drill as last time. If it's not immediately obvious to me what company this vendor belongs to, I can click on the vendor. It tells me the company is FEB. Awesome. I'll make note of the location, CH. I'm going to go this time to our expense account maps. And I'm going to go ahead and right away, well, let's see, how many maps do we have here? 24. So not super overwhelming, but I'm still going to filter it down, do what I can, just so that there are fewer maps that I'm having to review as I try to figure out where these journal entries come from. Now I'm looking at the products that are on this purchase. Again, if it's not immediately obvious to me what product type these products belong to, I could go ahead and click on the product. Product type here is beer. That's pretty obvious that it's an inventoryable product type, but if I wasn't sure, I could click on beer and it tells me right here, track inventory equals true. So if the name was something like miscellaneous or some abbreviation that you weren't familiar with, you could always click on that product type to see, is it track inventory true or false? This particular product is track inventory true, so it will be on the inventory asset account mapping. But as I scroll down and look at these, I notice this repack material here. So let's click on repack material. It's a product type of non-inventory. That does tell me that it's track inventory false. But again, if I wasn't totally sure, I could click on it. Okay, track inventory false. Awesome. That means this product is going to be following our expense account maps. So let's look, repack material. If I come to my expense account maps, am I mapped at that product level? We'll check repack material. Oops. Let's do it at the number level so I don't have to spell correctly. Fantastic. So this is mapped at the product level. I didn't even need to look for product type of non-inventory, although I could have checked that first too to see if it was mapped at the product type level. But like I said, oftentimes on the expense account maps, we are mapping at the product level, and it tells me it should be hitting this 787 GL account suppliers repack. Let's go and look at our journal entry, and there we go. There's our debit to our suppliers repack expense for that repack material here. Our debit to inventory domestic beer, that was coming from our other products up here. That mapping told it to hit this account. Again, we have a little bit of taxes being accrued here. That's fantastic. So we know that it should be hitting our excise tax payable account based on the inventory asset account mapping we looked on the previous slide. So fantastic. This all looks good to me. If this account, if this was not the account that I wanted it to be impacting, I know that I could come to my expense account maps and update that here so that moving forward, we would be hitting the account that is more appropriate. My pro tip related to expense account maps is if you have a product and it is, maybe it's even mapped on your expense account maps, but it is not hitting the general ledger account that you expect it to, check to see if that product is mapped for multiple locations. So in this case, we didn't introduce location as an option, so not something that's coming into play, but if you have one company that has 4 locations and maybe I've mapped this fuel charge for 2 of the locations, if that third location uses this fuel charge, it is not going to find this fuel charge surcharge map if I have introduced location. So my pro tip is if you are using location on expense account maps, make sure that those products are mapped for each location that could potentially be using them. Moving on to our accounts receivable account mapping. So this is for sales invoices or AR receipt invoices only. So only invoices are going to be looking at our AR account map. We typically don't have a ton of AR account maps, so this one is usually not very overwhelming, but our normal determining factors, if you have multiple companies, we'll look at that first. Again, you could introduce location here, but you don't necessarily have to. You would introduce location if location matters, if that is something that helps determine which general ledger account we're going to hit. And then I'll also call out product group. I don't see this being used super often, but if you have it's a way to group together customers and products that need to be grouped together, and those specific ones need to hit a specific AR account. We could use those here in the mapping, but oftentimes it is one AR map, one AR account map per company. But let's go take a look at an example and see what we can find. I'll close some of my other purchases here. So starting at a journal entry this time, this is from the journal entry table. I am filtered on, I have an AR receipt journal entry here. So it's definitely going to be using that AR account mapping. And I can see that this is for company capital. So let's go to our AR account maps. Not a lot here, so it's not super overwhelming. But if, I could filter to my capital C company, and it's going to tell me what accounts I should be hitting. I should be hitting this 20,000 account, and then my undeposited funds account. Let's just take a look at that journal entry, and that's exactly what we see here. It's an AR receipt, so we are relieving accounts receivable and moving those dollars into undeposited funds. So the accounts being used here look exactly as expected. If I wanted to get a little bit more detail, though, about what's making up these dollars, I could click on the AR receipts button right here, and it's going to tell me every invoice that is building that balance. So I've got a link to the invoice here. I've got, I can look at the customers here. If I was expecting a big payment from a specific customer, I could be glancing through, looking for big dollar amounts, or maybe looking for a specific customer if I was trying to identify a specific payment to make sure that it was included in this journal entry. I could do that here. Another way we can use this is if we want to look specifically at an invoice. I could click here. This gives me the invoice that was contributing to that journal entry. I see this invoice has both products on it and dollars received. So the AR receipt portion of this invoice is what we were seeing on our journal entry. And if I had not started at the journal entry, maybe I was starting at the invoice and wanted to think about what the journal entry would look like, I could get that information from here too. I could click on the AR account. What company does it belong to? Great, company 2. So that, again, that information tells me what mapping I'm going to be using right away, filter to company 2, and I can see it there. Oh, my pro tip here, if something is not hitting the AR account map that you expect it to, check the payment customer that is set on that AR account. So if we go back to my example here and I click on the AR account, you'll see that there's a payment customer here. That payment customer has a location associated with it. And so if you have a specific invoice related to a customer not hitting the map you would expect it to, go click on that AR account, click on that payment customer, and see what location is associated with it. If you've introduced location into your AR account maps, that could be causing the issue. And maybe we just need to update either that location on that payment customer, or maybe we need to pick a different payment customer for that particular AR account.
And Dawn, we did have a question come in real quick.
Sure.
Is there a way to investigate a journal entry AR invoice that was created before the day is closed, or will that usually pop up after the day is closed? If you want to touch on that.
Great question. So, our journal entries will not be created until we've run specifically AR end of day. But before you run AR end of day, you do have to run invoice end of day. So, closing your invoices, closing accounts receivable, it is specifically closing accounts receivable that's going to create that journal entry. So, you won't be able to see the journal entry either on the journal entry table, or if we go back to that specific invoice, we see a journal entry button here. I could click that and it will give me the specific journal entry associated with this invoice. You will not see that journal entry button until you've run AR end of day, and that's when that information gets created. Now, if you haven't run AR end of day and you're, trying to think, okay, what is my AR journal entry going to look like today? Potentially, you could just go to, if we pull up load sheets, I could filter on a specific day, filter on specific location, and what is my receipt total? 272,255.31. Awesome. So I would know that my journal entry, based on this information, I could predict what the journal entry would be. Here's my AR receipts. So it's going to be crediting this AR account and debiting this account for that 272,255. And if we go back to my example journal entry here, that's exactly what we see here. But no, you won't specifically see the journal entry until you run AR end of day. But if we're not ready to run end of day yet and you're trying to predict that journal entry, you absolutely can. In this case, when it's related to AR receipts, I'm going to the load sheets, totaling my AR receipts, and then using my mapping to tell me what accounts are going to be hit. So, great question. Moving on to our deposit account maps. So we were just collecting the money. Now we are ready to deposit the money. So our transaction source is deposit here. Our determining factors, again, always going to look at company. Next, we're going to look at deposit group. And deposit group is just a way to group together the different payment types. You may have a deposit group per payment type, depending on how your company makes deposits, or you could have 4 payment types lumped all together in a deposit group called all receipts. Totally up to you, but that deposit group is really doing nothing more than just grouping payment types together for you, so then you can map them here on the deposit asset account map. Let's go look at an example journal entry. So I've got a journal entry here, and my source is deposit. I can see the accounts being hit here, undeposited funds and the bank. So when we make a deposit, we are moving dollars out of undeposited funds and putting them into the bank account. That all looks good. I will call out again that this journal entry will not be created until you run AR end of day. So you could be making deposits, and we could theoretically come up with what those journal entries are going to be, but you won't actually see them on your journal entry table until you run AR end of day. That is what creates the journal entry. But let's look at the deposit that is creating this journal entry. We can click right here on the deposit link. It takes me to the deposits table. And what information can I get from here? I see the company, I see the deposit group. So let's go to our deposit account maps. And we'll filter my company, I think was capital C, wasn't it? Yep, capital C in check or money order. So we'll filter there. We will filter to check or money order. Great. And so that is telling me that we are going to put money into this bank account and we are going to relieve this undeposited account. So if we go back to our example journal entry, let's just prove it through. Great. Here is my undeposited. Here is my concentrator bank account. Fantastic. That journal entry looks just as expected. So that's great. If I hadn't run end of day yet, if this was still in balance status, and I was wondering what the journal entry would look like based on this information, I would grab, again, my company, grab my deposit group, go to my deposit account maps and see, I can see what accounts will be hit. Deposit error account in this case would just be if there was a discrepancy, a deposit adjustment here, a discrepancy in the amount that you are actually depositing in the bank versus what you cleared. Maybe it was cash you collected and somewhere along the way we lost a quarter or a nickel or a dollar or something. That would be when the deposit adjustment comes into play. Additionally, if I had some more questions, my journal entry looks expected, right? Like the accounts that were impacted were exactly what I expected it to be. But while I'm on this deposits table, if I have some more questions, I could do subtables invoices. And now I'm really getting into the good information. Okay, these are the customers that paid by check or money order. And these are the AR receipt invoices that were being collected and deposited via this record here. If we go back to our presentation, my pro tip here is payment type can be updated even after that invoice has been balanced or verified. So if those dollars that were collected are not going to the deposit group that you would expect, so you are expecting them to be under cash, but you don't see those dollars available to be deposited under cash, maybe somebody incorrectly gave it the wrong payment type of check or money order. So let's just go look at these example invoices here. We'll just click view. Always getting burned by time updated. So just change that. And then I'm going to add a column payment type. I could also get this information on the specific invoice, but I want to look at all of them. So all of these have a payment type of check, and that's what put them in that check or money order deposit group. But if these hadn't been deposited yet, I could still change it to move which group it would be rolling up. So if somebody incorrectly said this $219 were collected by check, but actually it was collected by cash, I could click the edit pencil and change it to cash. And again, this is assuming that these dollars have not been deposited yet. If I change it to cash, then it will show up in my deposit screen under my deposit group of cash, and I'll be able to make that deposit. So deposit group is great and determines how we can make those deposits. But if things aren't flowing into that right deposit group, it's coming from payment type, and that payment type is set at that invoice level. And you can make corrections if you need to, if you've caught it before you've balanced all of your deposits and run end of day. Income account maps. These are our most detailed maps. These are our transaction source of invoice. So anything related to a purchase is never going to look at our income account map. It is totally from invoices. Our determining factors, always going to look at company first. That will immediately eliminate a group, a set of maps if you have multiple companies. Next, we'll look at income area. Income area is really just how we group customers together. So you may have an income area called sales, where 95% of your customers live. They will follow those maps. You may have other income areas like out of code or breakage or inventory adjustment for those very specific breakage, out of code, inventory adjustment customers. Or maybe you have income areas, state per state, have an income area of, Texas or Iowa or Colorado. And again, it would just be grouping those customers together from that specific income area, if that matters to what general ledger account they should hit. If it doesn't matter if they're from Texas, Iowa, or Colorado, then those customers could all be in one default sales income area. But if that location matters, if it's a different general ledger account, then we would use income area to break those customers up to be more location specific. Then getting into our normal product type supplier or product. Again, most of your mapping, do it at the product type level, and then just map those products that need to behave a little differently at the product level. And of course, you can include supplier, again, if that is a determining factor into what specific general ledger account is going to be hit. Let's look at an example journal entry here. So I've got my invoice trans source journal entry. This is taking all of the invoices from April 15th and taking all of the journal entry impact from those invoices and putting it into one big journal entry. I can see here my company is capital C. If I want more detail about a specific account here, I can see these are my income accounts, meaning they're following the income column from the income account mapping. I could click on one of these, and it's going to give me all of the invoice transactions that are building that dollar amount. And then from here, I could actually get to an example invoice if there was one specific invoice. If something here looks off to me about one specific invoice, I could filter on that specific invoice and go from here. So this invoice, let's just look to see what information we can glean from it. AR account, capital C, tells me the company. So I'm going to come over to my income account maps. And let's see how many maps we have. We are at 134 maps. That is definitely an overwhelming amount. If I was just coming to this table to try to figure out a journal entry, I would be overwhelmed by 134 records. So let's come here and let's filter to the company we know it's supposed to be. And what other information can I get from this invoice? I'm just going to close a few of my other things that I had up. So I saw my company. What income area does this one belong to? If I click on the customer name, I get my distribution area. Distribution area is assigned to an income area. So pausing there for a second, customer to distribution area to income area. So my income area is CCB sales. Great. Let's come filter there. CCB sales. Down to 27. So we started at 130 plus records. Now I'm down to 27, already far more manageable. Then we can look at the products that are listed on here. Looks like a lot of inventory products. I could click on one. And again, my product type is over here. Product type is non-alc. So for this one, specifically this specific product, I could come here and see if we have non-alc mapped. We do, so I would expect the non-alc products on that invoice to be hitting this account. If it was non-alc and the supplier was Think Jerky, I would expect it to be hitting this account. But also from this invoice, because end of day has already been run, that journal entry has already been created, I can also click this journal entry button right here, and that will bring me to the journal entry detail report. And this will actually show me the specific invoice or the specific journal entry associated with this invoice. And so I can see all of the accounts being hit on this invoice. And so this journal entry data is being collapsed with all of the other invoice trans journal entries from this day into that big journal entry we saw in the journal entry table. But I can come here at the individual invoice and break it down using my journal entry detail report, clicking that journal entry button, again, to see what accounts are being hit. And then from here, I could break it down further. I could ask it to tell me, okay, specifically what product type. I could add product type, so it would tell me what product types were feeding into this account. And I would do this if I am questioning maybe why specifically this non-alc account is being hit. If I add product type here, then I can go back to my income account maps and say, okay, show me everything with that product type, every mapping, so that I can figure out which map it was that was leading to this journal entry. Pro tip here, check that distribution area associated with the customer on the invoice. If something is not hitting the map, you would expect it to. So if we go back to that example invoice, that customer name, it belonged to an income area of CCB sales. So when I go to my income account maps, I immediately filtered to CCB sales. If I didn't know that it was CCB sales and I was just coming and looking up the product type, non-alc, see where it's mapped. There's also this CCB supplier returns, and that's going to a different account. So this product type is mapped. That's great. But if it is not mapped for the income area associated with that specific customer, then these maps are not going to come into play. If that's the case, then we're going to be hitting one of these catch-all maps like the CCB sales where there's no product type supplier or product mapped. So it's going to hit miscellaneous income. If I haven't called it out specifically, it's going to hit this catch-all map here. So just be aware that, yep, okay, great, you've mapped that product type. Make sure you've mapped that product type for every different income area that it could be associated with. Let's investigate. Let's see why we are hitting this income error account. So we kind of saw that income error account on one of those catch-all maps on that income account mapping we were just looking at, but I've got an example journal entry here. I'm just going to close some of my tabs. Got an example journal entry here. It is invoice trans. I see my company, FEB. So immediately I could go to the income account maps and start filtering that information. Invoice trans tells me to go to income account maps. FEB tells me what company. And I was looking for that income error. So here is $1,200 in this income error account. I'm going to pull up a journal entry detail report to do a little digging to find out what is hitting that account. While those are pulling up, oh, well, it's here, so we'll pivot and do that. So my account, I pulled these up already because sometimes it takes this report a little bit to run, but I'm going to filter on that account that I saw in the journal entry, my income error account. I'm going to filter to the date that's on my journal entry. So this 12/14 post date. Again, just trying to keep the scope of my search very narrow. And then I filtered on source of invoice trans, and then I clicked create report. I also checked the box on product type. I could have checked the box on any of these things, but I'm trying to keep the scope of my search narrow. If I check all those boxes, I may get way more information than I can consume. So I'm going to start small. I want to see what is hitting miscellaneous income for this date, what product type. Okay, it is product type of non-inventory. So if I come back to my income account maps, this time I think my company was the FEB company. So I filter there. And then my product type was non-inventory. So let's just go take a peek. We don't have any maps for non-inventory for this company. So that I automatically know that I'm going to be hitting a catch-all account because that product type is not specifically mapped. But the other thing we could check is it's not mapped at the product type level. Is that product, that individual product mapped? So I could come over here and check the box on product num and product name. If I had more than one product type here, I could even come and filter specifically to the non-inventory ones. Again, just trying to narrow the scope of my search, click create report. And now I can see the specific product. Okay, so it is product called out of date beer. Let's go back to our mapping and let's see if out of date beer, actually, I want to see what that number is, 940. I always prefer to numbers. So let's see if it is mapped. It is not mapped at the product level either. So again, confirming that it is definitely hitting one of these catch-all maps. Now, which catch-all map is it hitting? Let's see. I also checked the box on invoice here. Because my scope was so narrow, this is just one day's worth of activity, and I'm really just filtered on one product type. I want to see this by invoice number so that I can see specifically which customers to lead me to my correct income area. If my date range was wider here, if I hadn't filtered to product type yet, or I wasn't filtered to a specific account, I would not choose invoice number. It is going to give me way more invoices than I know what to do with, but invoice number is super helpful once you've kind of narrowed the scope of your search. So then I'm going to go ahead and click on the invoice number. Great, brings me to the invoice. Sure enough, there's my product. What distribution area does this customer belong to? FEB supplier returns. Same name for the income area, FEB supplier returns. Great. So now I'm going to come to my income account maps and type in that FEB supplier returns. And then this is the map. This is specifically the map that was leading to that journal entry because we already checked. We know non-inventory is not mapped. We know that product is not mapped specifically. So great. Now I know why that account is being hit. Now, what should my next steps be? Let's create some maps. So I could map non-inventory at the product type level and tell it specifically what account I want it to hit. Or because non-inventory tends to have kind of a hodgepodge of products in there that all need to hit very specific accounts, maybe my better idea would be to map that specific product, map product 904, and tell it specifically what general ledger account I want it to hit if it is not this income error account. And that will fix everything moving forward. If I wanted to correct the history, now that my journal entry detail report is, my scope is so narrow and I want to fix the history, I could uncheck invoice num, expand my date range, filter on product 940. I can make my date range for the whole month of December, for all of Q4 of December, or for the whole year. And I could see all of the dollars that flew, that were moved to this account based on this product, based on the mapping. Then I can make my correcting entry, move all of the dollars that hit income error related to product 940 and move them into the account that I want them to. Updating the mapping will fix things moving forward. If I want to fix the past, use my journal entry detail report to get me the breakdown of this product contributing to this error account. One more example to investigate here. Let's investigate this specific account that I've pulled up on my trial balance. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up my trial balance report here. I'm going to close some of the other tabs that I have up. My example here, I want to look at this inventory domestic beer and look at the dollar amount that's in this account. If you are on Encompass Financials, you can use the trial balance as your financial book of record. So your dollars will make sense. They will be positive. In this example here, this test site is not on Encompass Financials. So if you are not on Encompass Financials, you can still follow this a little bit, but you will not have all of the other journal entries. So you will not have your purchase source journal entries rolling up into this report. That information gets moved over to QuickBooks or Sage or whatever your general ledger is. But you could still start here. So I am using my trial balance here. I am filtered to a particular company. I've given it a date range. If I want to know what the dollars are contributing to this account, I can click on that balance, come down here to the transaction detail report, and it will give me all of the transactions within this time period that are contributing to this balance. Again, if you are not on financials, we're only going to see one side. We're only seeing the invoice journal entries. We will not see the purchases side, bringing that inventory in. That's why our balance is so negative. But if you are on Encompass Financials, you'll see both. You'll see both invoice trans source journal entries and your purchase source journal entries. But where this is helpful is I can see all of those journal entries, and then I could click on them. I could click on the invoice trans. That'll take me to the invoice trans report, and then I could get to specific invoices that path. If I had my purchases here too, I would also have links to my purchases, and that would take me specifically to the purchase contributing to this account balance. So going from the report and drilling down gets me that journal entry detail. That can be helpful, but in this case, we are looking at an inventory account that does have a subledger. So if you are looking into an account that is inventory or accounts receivable or accounts payable, and you are trying to explain the balance, sometimes it's not the journal entries that are most helpful. Sometimes it's most helpful to go to that actual subledger data and see the transactions that are that real transactional data that is feeding into that account. So I'm pulling up my inventory valuation report, and this report can take a few seconds to run. So that's why I pulled up my already filtered versions over here so we don't have to wait. But pulling up my inventory valuation report. I'm filtering to the account that it is that I want to look into, that account 1131,000. I put in my date range, so I'm just looking for the month of March. And this posted value right here, this is what should tie to your balance sheet or your trial balance. So if we were on Encompass Financials, this is the amount that I would have seen on my trial balance that I was just looking at. If you are not on Encompass Financials, this is the posted value that you should see in QuickBooks or Sage or NetSuite or whatever it is that you're using. But I can get a little bit of information here that I can tie back to my journal entries. I see my posted invoices here for this particular time period for this particular account are 4.5 million. If I come back to that transaction detail report, I'm just going to grab my calculator and sum the net change, ignoring the beginning balance. I see that same number here, right? So the invoice transactions that were feeding into the inventory valuation report also created journal entries that are feeding into our general ledger. So I see that same impact here on my general ledger as I see in my valuation report. Okay, great. But again, I'm still questioning this dollar amount. What's really impacting this dollar amount? Product type is what speaks to me. So I'm going to filter this, or not filter, I'm going to drill in by product type, but you could drill in, is it location that is coming into play, supplier, brand, what is most meaningful to you? We can filter this report. Awesome. So now again, there's my total dollar amount, my 3.68 million. There's my total impact from invoices, but now I can see it broken out by product type. All right, beer is my biggest contributor to my domestic beer general ledger account. That seems totally expected. Maybe I'm surprised to see non-alc here. I could drill into that further. I could filter on non-alc my product type. I could add product ID and product name so that I can see specifically what products under non-alc are hitting this general ledger account, which I did here. And okay, so there are a ton of non-alc products that are hitting this general ledger account. Okay, great, good to know. Let's go see why they are hitting that general ledger account. If we go back to our inventory asset account maps, and let's see what company we were company capital C, and our product type was non-alc. So this is why those non-alc dollars are hitting account 1131,000, because our inventory asset account maps told them to. So we have non-alc mapped there. Okay, so that's why it's happening. If I would rather they not go to this domestic beer account, if I wanted to have a specific non-alc GL account, I would just update this mapping, update the account that I am wanting them to hit. I would update that here. That would affect every transaction moving forward. They would flow to the correct account. If you are on Encompass Financials, we will make that correcting entry for you, moving the dollars out of the incorrectly mapped account into the newly mapped account when you run via a subledger entry when you run a financial close. If you are not on Encompass Financials, just make sure whatever dollars existed in there, you're moving them to whatever account you want them to hit. Moving forward. So that was looking at a balance on the trial balance, and how did we dig into it? If it is a subledger account, AR, inventory, or AP, maybe going to that subledger data to get those details, and then the mapping marries it back to the journal entry. That is all I had for you today. I took up the full amount of time. Usually I speak much faster. I thought it would go faster, but what I hope that you take away from today is how important the mapping is. If you haven't looked at your mapping in a while, if it was done at implementation time and hasn't been looked at since, maybe go look. How are your product types mapped? Do you have red flag maps there to help you highlight when things maybe aren't going to the right account? And if you do need to drill into something to look into an account or drill into a specific journal entry, whatever you can do to narrow the scope of your search using your tools, using those reports, make that date range narrow, using that journal entry detail report, whatever filters, however narrow you can make it, start there. Then as you continue to refine your search, you can add additional details to see what's really contributing to those balances.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Don, so much. Again, we do have an extra minute. If anybody does have any last minute questions, please feel free to throw them in the Q&A. While we do wait on those, a friendly reminder that this will be updated in the recording archive section on that customer portal through e-learning. So you can go ahead and look for it there. It will be posted, like I said. If you are looking going to the producer specific forensic accounting BevAge Encore session that is happening right after this. So if you are a producer or a brewer, you can go ahead and head over there. With that being said, our Skills Kickstart sessions are starting up again, and the August sessions are posted, so you can find those again in e-learning. And if you do have any questions, Bev is always ready to help. You can also contact support. And like I said, you can always go back and rewatch this. So I want to thank everybody for their time. And like I said, I'll give it a few more seconds to see if any other questions roll in. But if not, I hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex.
Of course. Yep. And I don't see any questions coming in, so we'll go ahead and end it. Thanks again, everybody.
Thanks, guys.